The trends within the marketplace over the last couple of years have probably predominantly been driven around a couple of elements. One is the GFC and the impact that that's had on the accounting profession as a whole throughout Australia. And the second is probably legislative change. In terms of the impact of GSC, we've seen, and this has actually taken place at varying times throughout the country. So Sydney and Brisbane were probably the first regions to really feel the GFC, and as a result, profitability was significantly impacted in most instances. Many firms found that their value-add type services, their consulting services, tax advice, tax planning, for example, was no longer relevant or no longer beneficial or helpful. So I know some firms that almost lost 20–25% of their revenue because their consulting services were less important or less desired by the clients during that period. Also, we've had firms, for example, in WA that have had to fight with the mines for staffing. So they've had to commit to quite significant salaries for their staff. And as a result, certainly the mining's probably coming back a little bit in terms of WA and even regional Queensland. And they're finding that staff are perhaps a little bit easier to obtain. But at the moment, they've now got staff that are on these very high salaries, and they're feeling some pressures around their profitability area because of those high salaries. The second aspect in terms of the legislative change, we've got, for example, the accounts exemption that's going to come up in July 2016 and the impact that's going to have on accountants in terms of self-managed super funds. It'll be interesting to see whether it has the same impact as the BAS introduction and the GST in 2000, when a lot of more senior practitioners used that time to say, you know what, I think my time in the profession's done, and they actually got out. So as we start to approach, say, even July 2014 now, practitioners have got 2 years to think about how they're going to address that. We've also had a number of changes in terms of the financial services area with the FOFA coming through and the impact between financial planners and accountants. And I think that's still probably far from finished in terms of the changes, particularly given we're now starting to see some potential reforms as well with the newish government that's in place. So, all in all, aspects such as profitability, growth, continuity of services have been significant, and then we've got the impact of legislative change on top of that. So there's a few things really making life difficult for accountants. And it's interesting because up until now, most practitioners continue to grow year after year, but that's been something that we haven't seen for the last couple of years, or in fact since probably the beginning of the GFC.